Hello, I'm Ray. Now this podcast episode, I only got the idea for it this morning. We are in lockdown, as you probably know, here in the UK. Started the other day. I was just going for a little walk. I do that. I walk around a few streets just to keep the old bones moving, keep everything lubricated in the old body. And there were a little group of people on the other side of the road. They all had masks on and they were chatting. And the chap there was saying, "Oh, this lockdown doesn't affect us at all." I slowed down and just walked slowly. And he was saying, "Oh, we've got grown-up kids." He said, "They do the shopping for us. We've got our bubble. We've got grandchildren. They'll pop round with a bottle of milk or whatever." And then I think perhaps his wife or the woman was saying, "Oh, we paid our mortgage off years ago. Financially, we're fine." And the people they were talking to were saying, "Oh, yeah, stay with us. The lockdown doesn't affect us at all, really. One or two things we can't do, but in the main, don't care." As I walked on, I thought, well, that's all very well, but not everyone is in that situation, are they? Not everyone is in a house with family and friends to help. No money worries, plenty of money in the bank, no mortgage or rent to worry about. And it just reminded me of an elderly lady that I once knew. This is years ago when I lived somewhere else. I walked past her house one morning. It was their bungalows, actually. I walked past her bungalow and she was at her lounge window. She had a Zimmer frame. She couldn't walk very well. At her lounge window. And she was saying, "Oh, can you help me?" She had the window open. "Can you help me?" And I went up to the window and said, yeah, what's the problem? She said, "I haven't got any water. I haven't had any water for 2 days." Now, I had water where I lived a few doors away. So I thought it must be just her place. Anyway, I went in and she was right. Turned the taps on, no water at all. She said, "I've not had a drink or anything for 2 days." She did have a bit of milk. She said she drank that. She didn't have any cans of drink, like perhaps a lot of younger people would. And she hadn't had anything. So I went home and bought back some jugs and bottles there. I made several trips and stocked her up with water. And I said, "Look, I'll phone the water people for you just to see if it's a fault in the area or whatever." Because it seemed odd that her whole bungalow was cut off. And she said, "I haven't got a phone." So anyway, it's a bit of a long story, but I said, "Well, how do you talk to family and friends?" She said, "Well, I don't have family." She said that her husband had passed away. They'd never had children. So obviously no grandchildren or anyone like that to help. And she said as far as friends concerned, she couldn't get out. The neighbours, she said, didn't speak. I found this with a lot of people. They said, "Oh, I don't know my neighbours. I've lived there for 10 years, never seen the neighbours, never spoken to the neighbours." I find that very odd. Anyway, the water people sorted it all out and she was fine. And we did actually keep in touch. I said to her, what I'll do, I walk past every day. I said, "If you've got a problem, just shout out of the window." But the group of people talking this morning, that reminded me of this old lady. It's all right for them. They've got their money, they've got their children, their grandchildren, they've got friends. This old lady was on her own. And it must be dreadful thinking about the lockdown if you're stuck on your own. Now, in our street, this is unusual, I've discovered. You've probably heard of WhatsApp. We've got a WhatsApp group, and not everyone in the street is on it, but there are a lot of people on it. And if anyone's in trouble, they need something, they've only got to go onto WhatsApp and say, "Can anyone help? I need so-and-so." Within minutes, someone's saying, "Yep, I'll be right round. Hang on a second, I'll come round." It really is good. It's great because we can all keep in touch with each other. If anything happens in the road, something happens, we all know within a few minutes, if you've got your phone with you, of course. The little WhatsApp beeper goes off, beep, beep, beep. You think, "Hello, what's happened?" And it's great. And we also use it to arrange like Christmas get-togethers in the street, or in the summer we'll meet out in the street. Right, this Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock, we'll all go out there. Someone supplies the music. We'll all sit out there in our chairs and have a drink and a chat. It really is a nice community thing. But of course, a lot of people haven't got that. I've known people over the years that many people have said to me, "I don't know my neighbours, never see them, never speak to them. They don't speak to me." I remember I moved to a place, this again years ago, and I'd only been there a few weeks and hadn't seen any neighbours. And I saw the chap next door one morning as I was coming out, and I said, "Oh, yeah, good morning, I'm Ray." Morning. That was it, walked off. At least I got a morning out of it, but he walked off. back into his place. And I didn't know any of the neighbours in that road. How odd. Whereas where I live now, I virtually know everyone in the street. It's fantastic. But if you are alone, or if you know of someone alone, not only during lockdown, but any time, of course, especially at the moment, I think it's worth just popping round and saying, hi, I'm Fred or I'm Mary. I live down the road. Are you okay? That that reminds me, not here, another place I lived. The lady over the road, she was getting on a bit. Well, she was getting on a lot, actually. And her lounge light would go off at 9:30 every evening. That was it. Her routine. She was obviously off to bed. 9:30 every evening. I noticed one evening it was on at 10 o'clock. When I went to bed at 11, it was still on. And I just thought, she's probably just left it on, forgotten about it. The next evening, it was on, and it stayed on again till 11 o'clock, 11:30. And I thought, I won't go round now. I didn't know what to do quite. So I went round the following morning, tapped on the door and said, she opened the door. She said, yes. Now, she was known in the street to be a bit of a recluse and a bit grumpy, I think is the word. And she just said, yes. I said, sorry to trouble you, but I just wondered whether you were all right because your lounge light has been on in the evenings and into the night. She said, so? I said, well, I just wondered whether you'd fallen over and couldn't get up or there was a problem. She said, of course there's not a problem. I'm perfectly all right, and slammed the door. I thought, OK, well, at least I checked. I mean, she could have been on the floor, unable to get up. There could have been a problem. But, she was known in the road for being a bit rude. Now, the thing is, only, 2 or 3 hours later, she came across to see me. She knocked on the door and she said, I am so sorry. I'm terribly sorry. She said, you probably know that everyone in this road thinks I'm some grumpy old woman. I felt like saying, well, you are. And she said, I don't know why I'm like this. I don't have friends. It's just the way I am. And she said, thank you so much for coming over and making sure I was all right. Thank you for your concern. And that was great. And, from that day forward, she used to speak to me regularly if we saw each other. And she started speaking to other people in the street from that day forward. So that was really good. My going over there and just checking and getting this grumpy response actually turned out to be very good in the end. Of course, there's the other aspect of lockdown. Well, there's many aspects of lockdown. People that have lost their jobs. I know a chap, he was furloughed. In the end, he lost his job. And he hasn't got any money. He doesn't know what to do. I mean, it's awful, isn't it? I suppose the government doesn't have an endless pot of money. But this whole lockdown thing, for some people, it's a nightmare. I mean, for me, for example, no problem. People have said, it doesn't affect you, does it, Ray? Well, it does affect me. There are things that my wife and I don't do anymore. We can't go here, we can't go there. We're just stuck at home. I mean, she does the shopping because I'm older, and it's best that I don't go anywhere near shops. And they have said if you're going shopping, just don't both go. Just one of you go. It doesn't need two. So yes, it does affect me. I mean, I work from home. Well, I'm sort of retired really, but I work from home. I've got plenty of jobs to do around the house. I've got my amateur radio hobby, my ham radio. I spend a lot of time doing that. Jobs in the garden. Of course, it's winter at the moment, but it hasn't really affected us. We're fine. But of course, a lot of people, they are in dire straits because of this, and I really do feel for them. Just going back to people being alone. In the old days, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, most people had a milkman, of course. The milkman used to keep an eye out for people. He'd leave the milk on the step. If the milk was still there the following morning, there was a problem. Or neighbours would notice that her usual 1 pint of milk on the step is still there at midday. Is there a problem? So it is good to keep an eye on your neighbours, if you're speaking, that is. Another thing I do, because I work from home, some of my neighbours are retired, but a lot of them go out to work. I take in parcels. I take in deliveries for them. I've been doing it for years, and all the delivery drivers know now. If someone's out, that's right, go and see Ray, leave it with him, he'll sort it out. Sometimes in the hallway I've got perhaps 4 or 5 parcels for different people. But it's good, it works, again, part of the community spirit, it works well. Going to the other extreme, one extreme is where no one speaks. The other extreme I had years ago, again, I think that was back in the 70s. This neighbour, she was really friendly, she was lovely. She was only, 45, 50, not very old. And I was 20s, I suppose. She was always popping round. There was a sort of back way through between our gardens. There was like a little gate bit at the end. And she would always appear in my kitchen. And she'd say, "Oh, hello, Ray, I've just popped round." And I used to say, "Yes, I can see that." Hilda, her name was. Hilda. And I'd say, "Yeah, I can see that, Hilda. You're standing in my kitchen." I worked from home, so I was usually pretty busy. And it wasn't always convenient. But I didn't like to tell her. I mean, it wasn't every day. It seemed like every 5 minutes she was appearing in the kitchen. She was, "Are you there, Ray? Are you there?" "Yes, I'm here, Hilda, yeah." And I'd think, what is it this time? But no, she was lovely. And she used to make homemade cakes and things like that. And she'd bring them round to me. So it was really nice. Not for keeping slim and weight-wise, of course. Mind you, in my 20s, I didn't have to bother about my weight. I could eat, drink and be merry and lose weight, if anything. So that was the other extreme, she was always just popping into the back garden, stepping into the kitchen and having a chat. I think her husband worked away, that's what it was, he worked abroad somewhere. They didn't have kids, and I don't know whether she had family apart from that, but this is why she knew I was at home all day, and she'd pop round. Sometimes 3 times in a day. She'd come round the first thing in the morning, lunchtime. "Have you had lunch? I'm just thinking of making some cakes." And then later in the afternoon. But that's the other extreme. I mean, our neighbours, although we've all got each other's phone numbers, we've got the WhatsApp group, but we're not in each other's pockets. Not continually in and out of each other's houses, because I think that's the other extreme. It doesn't work. So yeah, that's the other extreme from a whole road of neighbours that don't speak to each other, never met each other and don't want to. Fortunately, I've never experienced bad neighbours. There are TV programmes, aren't there? What is it? Neighbours from Hell or something. But, there are a lot of neighbours that, OK, they don't only not get on, they fight. They argue and fight, all sorts of problems. That must be dreadful. Must be awful if you get someone move in next door to you and they turn out to be terrible. I don't know what the answer would be there if they're really terrible. Talking of people moving in, I did have a chap a few years ago, knocked on the door and he said, "Sorry to trouble you, we're thinking of moving into the road. Can you tell me what it's like?" And I said, "Well, yeah, it's great. You've got railway station not far and bus stop." He said, "No, I mean the people in the street. What are they like? Are they friendly? What sort of people are they?" And I thought it was quite a good question, actually. I said to him, "They're dreadful. You don't want to live here. They're awful." And I said, "I'm the worst of the lot." No, I didn't say that at all. I lied. No, I told him, I said, it's a very friendly street. As I said, not in each other's pockets, but very friendly, all willing to help if you need it. And I thought that was a good idea because estate agents they don't know, do they? They don't know what the neighbours are like. They'll just say, sought after residential area. Very good price, buy the house quickly so I can get my commission. They've no idea what the area's like, really, what the neighbours are like. Well, they wouldn't have, would they? They don't live here. But I thought that was quite a sensible thing to do. The chap didn't move in. It wasn't me that put him off, but there was a place, I forget where it was, just down the road, a house for sale. He didn't move in, someone else did. But I did think that was quite a sensible thing to do. Just check with 1 or 2 of the people that lived in the street. I remember I was buying a bungalow many, many years ago, and it was all going through, and someone said to me, that used to flood, that bungalow. It flooded because there was a stream at the end of the road. And that worried me. I went to the estate agent and they said, no, it doesn't flood. So I went to the bungalow that was for sale, spoke to the neighbours, and I said, "Look, I'm thinking of moving in. Has it ever flooded?" And one chap next door, he said, "No, what it is, the stream did overflow a couple of times, but it didn't come anywhere near the bungalows. It was right down there. And," he said, "if you look," which I did, he said, "there's a digger. They're dredging the stream out to make it deeper." So it's a good idea if you're going to move somewhere, just go and ask the neighbours, knock on the door and say, "Are you the neighbours from Hell? Because I'm thinking of moving in next door." And they'll probably say, "Well, no, we're not, but are you going to be?" This is turning out to be more about moving house than living at home alone during lockdown. But I must just tell you this, there was a chap, he had a flat. He lived in the upstairs flat and the downstairs flat. It was a converted house. The downstairs flat was for sale. He wanted a friend of his to buy it. So whenever the estate agent came round and was showing people the downstairs flat, he stomped around on the floorboards upstairs. He blasted out music and made all sorts of noise, slamming doors. And of course, the estate agent couldn't sell the flat. He went to him. The estate agent went to him and he said, "Are you always like this, or are you doing it deliberately?" Because, he obviously realised that the chap was doing it deliberately. And the chap said, no, he said, I'm quiet. What do you mean? I play my music. Anyway, in the end, they reduced the price and this friend of his bought it. He waited till the price came right down. It was reduced, and in the end he bought it. I mean, that's naughty, isn't it? That's very naughty, actually. There's probably a law against that, but how do you prove anything, I suppose? I don't know. I was listening on the radio this morning and they were talking about people being evicted because they can't pay the rent. They can't pay the rent because they've lost their jobs. There was one chap on the radio quite some weeks ago. He was complaining. He said, "I've got absolutely no help at all." Now, the Inland Revenue are giving self-employed people some money and they're going by your previous earnings. So being the Inland Revenue, they can look at your computer screen, look at your books and say, "Oh yeah, look, this is what he normally earns a month." And they will help to top that up. And this chap on the radio, he said, "I've had no help at all." And the radio presenter said, "Well, what about the Inland Revenue? They look at your earnings." And he said, "Oh, well, yeah, I don't tell them that I earn much, really." A chap I know, he said, "Well, I've only been telling the revenue I'm only on a few pounds a week. I don't declare the rest to save income tax." Well, there you go. You reap what you sow, as someone said. It's quite funny, really. I mean, it's not funny for the people involved. Well, it serves them right for cheating the Inland Revenue. I don't know. But no, seriously though, people that are thrown out of their rented accommodation because they can't pay the rent, what are they supposed to do then? It really is bad for some people. And as I said, hearing those people chatting in the street, "Well, we're okay, it's all right for us. We've paid our mortgage off. We've got children. We've got grandchildren. No problem for us at all." I thought, yeah, well, that's all very well. But what about the poor people that are in dire straits? When I was young, someone said to me, "There'll always be someone better off than you, and there'll always be someone worse off than you." And they went on to say, don't look at people that got more money than you and be jealous. Like, "Oh, it's all right for them." Don't be jealous of people with more money. And don't look down upon the people that have less money. It's not always their fault that they're not earning a great deal of money. So you should never be jealous of people or look down. Just be thankful for what you've got. That's what I've always thought. My father-in-law always said, "If I've got a penny more than I need, I'm happy." And obviously that means if you've got a penny more than you need, you've paid your bills, you've bought your food, you're living okay, you've got a penny over, well, that's fine. Obviously you've got enough money. And I've never forgotten that. That's good. So yes, if you've got a penny more than you need, you're fine. So if you know anyone perhaps lives alone in your street, just pop along, knock on the door, make sure they're all right. Because they might not be very well. A friend of mine's got COVID, and his wife, and his daughter. And my wife and I know someone else. Their son has COVID, their daughter is suspect. And there's another chap I know. He's just been tested. Apparently he's lost his sense of taste and sense of smell. Well, they are symptoms, aren't they, of COVID-19. So you've got to be so careful. You've got to be very careful. I don't go out anywhere. I am not isolating 100% because I think you only do that if you are positive. I don't mean positive thinking. I mean positive, yes, you've got COVID. But I don't go out anywhere unless I really have to. Luckily, my wife does all that. And when she gets back with shopping or whatever, we use the hand gel stuff and we spray the shopping bags and everything. We go over the top. I think that's the best way. Someone did say on the radio recently, the best way to think about it is pretend that you've got it. All right, pretend that you've got COVID and you don't want to pass it on. That way, you're going to be extra careful. You're going to put a mask on and not breathe on people, keep away from people. So there we are. Now, who was it? It was James. I keep thinking of you, James, in Alabama. You said, do an hour-long episode. And so, was it Stan or Ray, my namesake Ray? And there was John. Oh, here we are. That's my bit of paper. John, Derek, Brian, Edward. I've got a whole list of people here. They've all said, yes, do an hour-long podcast. Do an hour long. Well, I'm looking at the computer screen now, and it says 20 minutes, 47 seconds. You want another 40 minutes of this? Are you sure? Being serious for a moment, and this really is nice. This made my day. Several people have emailed me, and they have said, thank you for the podcast episodes. I don't know what I'd do without them. I look forward to Sundays when the podcast episodes come on, because I live alone and it's company. So I keep people company. It really did make my day. Thank you to those people. I did reply, but thank you to those people who emailed. And it's really nice to know that apart from the podcast episodes being a bit of fun, a bit of humour, it is actually helping people. So that did make my day. Thank you for that. Of course, not all old people are on the internet, are they? We do, with the family during lockdown, we do all this Zoom and FaceTime stuff, and we all keep in touch. But not all old people. I mean, I'm old people and I am on the internet, but a lot of them aren't. They've only got perhaps their ordinary telephone. A lot of people don't have a mobile phone, older people I mean. So they must feel really cut off. Even if they have got family, they still must feel really cut off. Back in the 60s, of course, we didn't have internet and mobile phones. If you were lucky, you had a phone at home, but not everyone did, a landline phone. A lot of people didn't even have that. They had the phone box down the road. A friend of mine, he was, about 17, 18. He'd left home and lived in a bedsit, like a bed-sitting room. He didn't get on with his dad or something, I can't remember the details. And he had, was it glandular fever or mumps or something like that? He had 6 weeks off work. Now, I worked with him. He was off work for 6 weeks. And on the Friday, the first Friday he was away, the boss said, can you drop his wages round? We used to get our wages, didn't we, in a little brown envelope. And it would say, there's your earnings. That's what the Inland Revenue had stolen, taxed you. And the envelope had the cash in it. So I took it round and knocked on his bedsit door, and there was no answer. I knocked again, and I thought, well, he can't be out. Then he opened the door, eventually, and he looked really ill. And I said, you all right? And he said, no, I'm not. I said, well, I've got your wages. He said, can you go and buy me some food? And I went in, and I said, get back on the bed, 'cause, as I say, bed-sitting room. I went in there, and he said, I've not eaten for several days. I said, what do you mean? I thought he was joking. He did look ill. He said, I haven't got any food. And I opened his fridge. There was some stale something in there that smelt a bit and some bad milk. And he said, I can't get out. He said, I'm just that ill. I said, well, aren't there other people in the house? Because there was no phone. He said, oh, there's someone upstairs. He said, I've called out, but no one seems to hear me. And he hadn't eaten. I think it was 3 or 4 days. He'd had nothing to eat. And he was really bad. Anyway, first thing I did, I went out and I came back with fish and chips for him. And he woofed that lot down. I think that made him worse, actually. He felt quite ill after that, but he had that. And it was silly, I know, but I bought several bottles of beer back and he woofed that lot down. I don't think that helped. But it just goes to show you someone living alone. And he was only, 18? I was 18. We worked together. And I hadn't thought of going round there. I just thought, oh, he's off ill. I didn't know it was glandular fever. The boss just said, oh, he won't be in, he's ill. Can you take the wages round? Someone must have, I don't know what happened. He must have told the firm somehow that he wasn't well. But it's a good job I went round there because he might have starved to death. I've just thought, I had my blood test a week ago, didn't I? This diabetes test thing, sugar level. That was a week ago. I haven't heard. They did say that if I don't hear anything, then it's okay. But you wonder whether it's not okay and they've just forgotten to tell me. I don't know, I might give them a ring later. It was Stan, wasn't it? Stan was one of the people about this hour-long episode. I don't know, Stan, we'll see. Decorations are down now. All the Christmas decorations have gone, the tree. Do you know, it's funny, every year I'm saying to my wife, we put the tree up, and I'll say to my wife, before we know it, we'll be taking this lot down. And we do. And every year when we take it all down, I say to her, before we know it, we'll be putting all this up again. It'll be another year gone. Struth. Where does the time go? A friend of mine, Jane, she lived with her parents. Well, she actually had a bed-sitting room or a small flat in a town about 30 miles away. That was her home address because she worked in that town. But she actually lived with her parents, so she was not registered as a parent's house. And her parents eventually passed away. They lived to a ripe old age. They passed away. She was an only child, and she assumed that the house and everything was going to her, which you would. I think that's what her parents had sort of led her to believe. When they passed away, she was sorting out papers and the rest of it in the house, and it was her childhood home. So she'd grown up there, and obviously she wanted to stay there. And she discovered, as she put it, the terrible truth. The terrible truth. Her parents, quite a few years previously, had done one of these equity release schemes. You know, where if you own your own house, the equity in it, you can take thousands, tens of thousands of pounds. The only thing was, the house then belonged to this equity release company, or the majority of the equity anyway. And she said she was shocked, devastated. She just didn't know what to do. She had this small flat 30 miles away in this town where she worked, and she was hoping to move into the family home. I mean, she lived there anyway, most of the weekends, that sort of thing. And she had to get out. She had to leave. And she ended up, she said, with a few £1,000s in the bank. The furniture she had to sell, because she had nowhere to put it. It wouldn't fit in her small flat, because the flat was purely for the weekdays when she was working over there. You would have thought that her parents would have told her. But no, she said that they were off on a world cruise. They always had plenty of money. She put that down to her father's pension. He had a particularly good job, and he had a very nice pension, a private pension apart from the state pension. And little did she know that the world cruise and the holidays and the new car and everything was spending all the equity that was in the house. So that was dreadful. So she ended up on her own, unable. I mean, she was 40 odd. I think her parents had her when they were quite old. So she was 40 odd, and that's it. She was in a rented sort of bedsit place. Dreadful, really. I haven't seen her for years, so I don't know how she's doing now. In a similar vein, can I say a similar vein? Yes, that's right, isn't it? I like to be grammatically correct. Some people say, I would have gone to the shops, don't they? I would have gone to the shops. I would have thought. It's not of, it's have. Anyway, this friend of mine, his mum passed away and he was left with his dad in the house. Similar sort of story. He was left with his dad. His dad did all the bills, the paperwork. And this friend never married. Eventually his dad passed away and he just stayed in the house. Well, he thought that's what he was going to do. He was sorting through his dad's paperwork, and his dad had this desk, all the paperwork in there, because he obviously had to take over the electricity bill, the gas bill. And he found a folder marked house, and he discovered the terrible truth. The house was rented. He said to me he had no idea whatsoever that it was rented. He assumed that they'd had a mortgage. His dad had paid off the mortgage years and years ago, and that was it. It was free of mortgage, no rent. It was his house. No, it was rented. He said he could afford the rent. He was still working, of course, he said, but to rent it was a large house, a 4-bedroom house, I believe. And he said he didn't really want to rent a 4-bedroom house. He had to move out, and he rented a small flat. So he had no money. Someone did say to him, because he was saying, I was relying on that. And someone apparently said to him, well, you shouldn't rely on things like that. And I thought, well, fair enough. You live with your dad. You think it's your dad's house. You're the only child. You would think that the house would go to you. I don't know. But, similar situation. So he just ended up in a small rented flat, where, as far as I'm aware, he still is. But, it's such a shame. His dad should have said, because I said to him, didn't you realise? He must have realised it was rented. But he said, well, why would I? Someone came round to fix the gas boiler or whatever. He said, I assumed my dad had arranged it and my dad was paying for it. He paid his dad money, sort of housekeeping money to live there. He said, I had no idea that a landlord or a letting agent had sent the boiler man round. So that's another very sad story. Actually, it's best not to rely on anything, isn't it? Because I've heard people say in the past, oh, one day when my parents go, the house will be mine. I'll either live there or sell it. I'll have plenty of money. That's what a friend of mine thought. I'm going back years now. His mother was left on her own. She went into an old people's home, nursing home or whatever it is. Do you know the bill? You won't believe this, I didn't. £1,600 a week. Not a month, because I thought a month at first, and no, a week. £1,600 every 7 days. She had to sell the house, of course, to pay for it, and within no time at all the equity from the house had gone. When she passed away, this friend of mine didn't have anything. Nothing was left to him at all. Another friend, very, very lucky chap, well, not lucky to lose his parents, but his parents passed away, and not only did they leave the house, there was no home or anything to go into. They left him the house, and they also owned 2 other houses that they were renting out. So there was the income from that. He was left, well, not laughing because he'd lost his parents, but he was left financially in a very nice position. So it's no good relying on anything. It's no good thinking, oh, well, later on in life I've got my parents' house or I've got this money to come, because it might not turn up. I know people who've been left alone at home, and it must be awful. 50 years or more married, suddenly your partner's gone, your husband or your wife has gone, and you're on your own in the house, and your partner might have done all the bills, all the paperwork, all that sort of side of everything, and suddenly you're left not only without your husband or wife, but you've got all the bills to do, all the paperwork, and it must be a nightmare for them, especially people that don't have family, or family that perhaps live abroad. I know a couple, their son lives in Australia, so he can't be of much help. It must be awful to suddenly find yourself left alone and then have all this responsibility of all the paperwork and the bills to sort out. What about the house insurance, the contents insurance? What happens there? What about the car, if they're running a car still? Who's the car insured with? What happens to all that paperwork? So it must be terrible. I've often thought it must be terrible to sit there alone in the house after 50, maybe 60 years together, and just to find yourself on your own. Must be awful. I don't know which is worse, if doing that in the house, or it must be worse going to an old people's home, mustn't it? I would hate that. I'm so fussy with food. I don't know what I'd do. I'd just say, I'm not eating that filth. They'd serve up some sort of disgusting meat dish. No, not disgusting. I'm sure some of the food is good. It's just that I am particularly fussy. I don't eat meat. I think I've said that. I don't call myself a vegetarian. I don't know why, but I just don't eat meat. I never have. I don't like it. A friend of mine, he doesn't drink. And I said to him, how come you don't want a beer or anything? You don't like any drink at all? He said, no. He said, when I was in my teens, I tried a pint of beer. He said, I didn't like it. He said, I just didn't like it, so I never bothered again. Can you hear that? Did you hear that? That is our WhatsApp, our street WhatsApp. So I'm going to have to check that to see if someone's in trouble or someone's arranging a get-together. Well, there won't be get-togethers now, will there? We're in the middle of the beginning of our 3rd lockdown. I'll just check the street WhatsApp. Hang on a second, I'll be back. That was just someone off to the local supermarket. Does anyone want anything? See, that's exactly how it works. Isn't that brilliant? Does anyone want anything? If someone's short of milk or whatever, they just reply, yeah, get me a pint of milk or whatever it is. They're 4-pint things of milk, aren't they, these days? I think you can get smaller ones. I am a vegetarian. I don't know why I don't use that word. I think it's got sort of some implications. A friend of mine's a vegan, and I don't know, people, he's called sort of weird names that because he's a vegan. Sort of, people get the wrong idea. In fact, someone the other day said to me, if you're vegetarian, what do you eat? I said, well, cheese sandwiches. I like cheese and pickle. Yeah, but you're vegetarian. You can't have cheese. I said, no, I can have cheese. Oh, you can't have eggs. No, I can have all dairy products. People get it all wrong. That's why I don't use the word vegetarian. I just say I don't eat meat, which I don't. Also, someone said, how can you keep to these strict rules? They're not rules. I don't get a book, right, vegetarian, you can do this, you mustn't do that, you can't eat this, you can't eat that. I eat what I like, and I don't eat what I don't like. I think most people are the same. I'm not going to label myself I don't like meat, so I don't eat it. It's not that I can't eat meat. Of course I can. I can go and have a bacon sarnie now if I want. I can go and buy a burger. I just don't like it. So it's not a case of what I can or can't eat. As this chap put it, what are you allowed to eat? It's nothing to do with what I'm allowed to eat. I eat what I like. It's strange being labelled, isn't it? I'm a pensioner. I'm a home owner. I'm a driver. I'm a pedestrian, because I walk sometimes. I'm an ex-smoker. It's strange. You could write down probably a whole list of things that you're labelled as. Oh yes, I'm a senior citizen. If we go anywhere, well, when we used to go places, when I was allowed out, they'd say, are you a senior citizen? I'd say, yes, could you get a discount? My wife, she says, right, one adult, one child, say we've got a grandchild with us, and one senile citizen. And it always makes people laugh. I'm the senile citizen. So there's another label. Mind you, I've been labelled as worse. I'm also a taxpayer, even at my age. Struth, a taxpayer. One label I don't want, and that's a diabetic. I must, no, I won't ring the doctor yet. I'll wait till a couple of days, give them a chance. They must be busy at the moment with everything going on. So I won't phone and create more work for them. I'll probably give them a ring in a couple of days, and I'll let you know the outcome of my blood test on the next podcast episode, which will be next Sunday. That's if you're interested. You're probably saying, well, what do we want to know that for? Not interested in your blood test results? I don't know. Perhaps I'll do a whole podcast episode on my blood test results. Now, if you want to email me, it's raisrants, all one word, raisrants @protonmail.com. raisrants@protonmail.com. Love to hear from you. I do answer all emails. I say that every week, don't I? I do answer all emails. So it would be great to hear from you, especially if you've got any ideas. I've had a few, actually. I've had quite a few ideas suggested by various people. Who was it? Here was someone calling herself Daisy from Spain. Hello, Daisy, if you're listening. I did answer you. I'm afraid your suggestion is brilliant. It's absolutely lovely. It's about relationships. But as I said to Daisy, I can't... It's not suitable, Daisy, is it? It just isn't suitable for a podcast episode. But a brilliant idea all the same. A lot of people actually have suggested relationships, and it is something that I'm working on sort of mentally. I'm thinking about it. There are a lot of different relationships. There's love, there's all sorts of things. What was it? Someone said boy meets girl. Can I talk about that sort of boy meet girl type relationship where things go wrong or people end up married or whatever? Yeah, I'll give that some thought. Okay, we've made, 38 minutes. Not quite the hour that people wanted, but 38 minutes. Seriously, I could talk quite easily for another 20 minutes. But do you really want that? Let me know. As I say, email me, let me know. I'll ramble on, but I don't want to ramble on if most of you switch off after half an hour and I'm rambling on to myself. Take care. See you next Sunday. Thanks for listening as always. Bye-bye for now.